Hey Arpit, welcome back. How are you?
Doing well, Jayant. How are you doing?
Yes, good, good. As you can see, I've got my India jersey on. I'll just stand up a little bit to just show.
Nice. This is a
Uh,
retro India jersey, right?
yes, it is. I actually realized I own very few, cricket, at least memorabilia merchandise. So for those who are listening on audio, as Arpit said, I'm wearing the India retro jersey from the 92 Cricket World Cup, which I think also the India team was wearing more recently. So yeah, today happens to be when the Asia Cup India versus Pakistan matches. I don't know when we'll publish this. This is the date when the matches. So I thought I'll show my support and wear
That's
wear
awesome.
the
Yeah,
jersey.
I think it's for me. The match is tomorrow morning, so my jersey will be on tomorrow morning. So let's start with this. Do you have any India Pakistan pre-match build-up or traditions apart from just the jersey?
No, I guess traditions per se, but I remember, at one of our first podcasts, you asked me what is my favorite match to rewatch. So I do like rewatching some big India Park moments just to get myself in the mood. And one moment that really stands out is the 2003 game in the World Cup at Centurion. And in particular, I like watching this one shot where there's this one over where Wasim Akram is bowling to Sachin. The first or second ball of the match, Sachin tries to hit him over mid-off, and Abdul Razak drops a pretty dolly catch, and Wasim Akram is just distraught. And then the next, I don't know if it's the next ball or the ball after that, Wasim Akram bowls an even better delivery, believe it or not. It's like just pitching outside off stump and shaping in. So you can be out in multiple ways. You can be out LBW, you can be out caught behind, you can be out bowled. And Sachin just shifts his weight onto the back foot and punches it, and it just races through. And I still remember that was the moment on that day where I felt, wow, this guy is really on edge, but he's in that zone today. So
Yeah.
just moments like that, rewatching it, I tend to do that sometimes just to get in the zone. Uh,
Two. Yeah. Before I come to my traditions, two
yeah.
things that come to me from this match. One is the point you made around Sachin, just pure timing on that shot. If I remember correctly, when this match had been played, they analyzed Sachin's
Mm,
trigger movement before the ball is bowled. And I think Shoaib Akhtar was at his peak around this time.
mm,
And because you have to adjust to the additional pace that Shoaib brings, they showed the trigger movement change of Sachin from just a series before to
mm.
his trigger movement in the game facing Shoaib Akhtar. And there
Interesting.
was a very marginal but clear change where Sachin makes his trigger movement a few milliseconds before for Shoaib Akhtar as compared to all the other bowlers,
Yeah.
just so that he can adjust to that pace much faster. And the thought that, okay, the cricket is played at this level, that
Yeah.
a few extra clicks per hour is causing trigger movement changes for one of the best batsmen in the world, arguably the best at that time. It was just fascinating for me to think about going into this game. And the second tidbit that I just read today on a
Uh-huh.
Twitter thread
Mhm.
was, I think Pakistan scored 272 or 273 for India to chase.
Yeah.
And Sachin and Sehwag, as they were walking out to bat,
Uh,
apparently at the staircase where they're walking down,
uh-huh.
सहवाग tells Sachin कि आज मुझे मत बताना कि कैसे बैटिंग करनी है. Don't tell me how to bat today,
Right.
because he was in the zone. And then Sachin has probably this little pause and he just said, let's go get these guys. I literally have
Yeah.
goosebumps as I'm saying this. Just these little tidbits when you hear about them in the past is incredible. My quick tradition, I have this one stupid tradition on India Pakistan, which I've been doing for a long, long time, is I actually watch the movie Border.
Wow.
And this is growing up, you wanted to be as charged up as possible, especially the part where Sunny Deol just has his dialogue against the Pakistani forces. That's one movie I really like to watch before India Pakistan game to charge myself up and remind myself that I have to be really, really hating these guys, because as we've grown up, you've obviously made friends who are Pakistanis. Growing up, you never met folks from Pakistan. Now you have.
Yeah.
And it's much more difficult to be enemies or against them. So this is one way to bring back the charge and the fire before the game.
I might do that tonight, just having heard that I haven't seen Border in a long time. Those who don't know, Border is this Bollywood movie which depicts this war between India and Pakistan. And there's this famous scene where this actor called Sunny Deol, delivers this impassioned plea. It's almost like Mel Gibson Braveheart kind of let's go get them type of. So anyway, speaking of traditions, so welcome to episode 3. Hopefully this podcast now becomes a tradition. So welcome to Pitch Rapport episode 3. So what's on your mind today? Where do you want to start the conversation apart from India, Pakistan?
India-Pakistan was the first thing I wanted to talk to you about. What do you think about the build-up that happens for India-Pakistan game nowadays? As we said, this probably gets published by the time the match is already over.
I mean, the result will be the result. But one thing that I've been thinking about, because where the match is, and obviously originally the tournament was supposed to be played in Sri Lanka. Now it's being played in the UAE. But also the actual T20 World Cup is going to be played in Australia. And I also was following the England South Africa game, and it got me thinking about pitches and conditions, right? Because obviously the T20 format is probably compressed, so pitches do come into the mix and conditions do come into the mix. But for test matches, like we saw two wildly different test matches, right? Like in Lord's, South Africa completely dominated from day one, wrapped it up in 3 days. In Old Trafford, England completely dominated from day one and wrapped it up in 3 days. So I keep wondering, how much do we think like pitches and conditions make a difference? To what degree do they influence, and in some cases even decide or tilt the outcome? So wanted to get your take on it.
Awesome. I think if I had to give a TLDR, pitches are like the instrumental part of cricket, and they will fundamentally keep affecting the game for as long as we will know. The crux being that I think this is the advantage that you get when teams play at home and at away, which is not just a crowd advantage, but figuring out how the pitch of that specific country would behave.
Mhm.
For me, we are slowly reaching a point where we do have a setup as India and as most countries. We do have horses for courses kind of an approach. And we used to earlier see that only from a perspective of which type of bowlers do we pick. So we will always pick more seamers in England or more swing bowlers in England, and we'll pick more spin bowlers in Asia. The kind of bowlers will always be the same. So you'll always have the same seamers or the same spinners. What's interesting for me now is I'm beginning to see this trend in batsmen, which used to not happen before. So, for example, is more likely to play overseas than he's going to play domestic. Because you need more flat track or spin bullies than you need overseas. And I'm also seeing that change happen within the bowlers. So it's not that we're just changing the combination of seamers and spinners and we have the same set of seamers or spinners, but the bowlers themselves are changing based on the track. So you'll probably see an Akshar Patel play far more domestic cricket than you'd see him play overseas. And same thing for Ashwin. So Ashwin probably makes it to the team. Ashwin probably makes it to the team 11 in Test cricket, irrespective. But yeah, Kuldeep probably or Ayuzi will not play as many one days overseas as they will in India. So I'm just beginning to see that change of not just the team combination, but within that combination, who is the spinner or who is the batsman that go in? How do you think about it?
I definitely see what you're saying. For me, first of all, the fact that this game has something called a pitch is just for me so fascinating. I can't think of any other sport where such a small patch of the area where you play makes such a big difference, right? Like I remember the days where before the match you would have commentators talking about the pitch, and like I don't know, an Ian Chappell or a Tony Gray going with like a keychain and trying to put their key into the pitch to tell you whether it's a hard, it's a soft pitch, and then they would tell you about the color of this. I would always be fascinated to see how exactly it would be like. And one of my favorite cricketing memories is watching a test match in Napier in New Zealand. This is 2009, where Gautam Gambhir led this rearguard effort where India were forced to follow on. And then he batted for like a day and a half and just grinded out like 100 runs in some 400 balls. But on that day, what happens in New Zealand is during the lunch and the tea break, they actually open up the boundary. And so you can actually walk into the outfield. Of course, they cordon off the pitch, but you get to see the pitch from a very close. So I was there for days 3, 4, and 5. And you can actually see how different the pitch looks on day 3 versus day 5. And in some cases, in especially countries like England or in South Africa or even Australia, New Zealand, you can almost see how the same patch of whatever, clay or mud or whatever you want to call it, changes through the day. So suddenly it will feel lifeless. Then suddenly it will start acting. So for me, that is a very fascinating aspect of the game, which obviously everybody tries to analyze. And the second is, I think what you explained really well, which is how the combinations of teams change, and more how people are even thinking not just about bowlers, but also about batsmen. I was reading this fascinating piece that where Ashwin, in his quest to make a comeback into the limited overs format, was even looking at, in a lot of cricket grounds, what we see is there are multiple pitches that can be used on the same ground, and some are more closer to one side of the boundary versus the other. And so he even decides the angles he wants to bowl and where he wants to pitch the delivery based on how far the boundaries are on the offside or on the leg side. So for me, like, it's not just the actual pitch, but even where the pitch is relative to the ground, that also I think makes for a fascinating conversation also.
Awesome. And I think one of the reasons why we're also called pitch rapport comes from our very smart pun called pitch report.
Of
Um,
course.
yeah, I think on staying on this point of the pitch,
Yeah.
I've been following cricket for a long, long time, but
Yeah.
I still always keep getting confused on what pitches and what conditions
Mm.
change the game in what way. So I would like a 101 on how pitches across the world differ. How are they inherently different because the country they're based in? And
Mm.
then let's layer on top of it what happens because of the weather on that day. How
Mm.
does that influence the nature of the pitches?
So, I mean, the way I understand it is firstly the nature of what is in the pitch, right? So, what kind of clay, how much has it been rolled, how much has it been watered, and in some cases, in countries like Australia and New Zealand, they've had what's called drop-in pitches. So, while we think that the whole ground is one patch of land, what's actually happened is in these grounds, they've actually created, in inverted commas, a pitch in like a lab, almost in some other setting, and they simply just take it and drop it in. They've dug a hole in the shape of a pitch and they've just simply created and dropped it in. So I think one of the main things that affects it is the nature of the clay or the sand itself that's in it. And I guess what the way, as I understand it, really affects it is how much is the clay bound to each other. So we've seen, for example, pitches in grounds like Perth or some of the grounds in the West Indies where they say there are a lot of cracks, which means the pitch is drier, but it's also harder. Right? There's two elements to it. One is whether it's dry or it's more moist, and the second is whether it's harder or whether it's softer. So pitches which are drier but harder tend to have bounce as well as space associated with it. So that's why one of the famous grounds, which is unfortunately not a test ground anymore, the Waka in Perth, used to be the dry and the hard ground where you would see a lot of cracks. So there would be pace and there would be bounce. At the
Right.
same time, you would have pitches which are more moist. So in conditions like England, where now we're talking about the atmosphere, where you would have rain, so pitch itself would become a little bit more moist. And it's also, they usually also have some kind of, talk about green covering. So you have a little bit of grass. So that means you get movement of the ball after it pitches off. So you get more movement and you also keep getting pace because of that. And then you take the exact opposite, like India, where you have pitches which are maybe not as hard. So there is where you start to see the pitch, to, as they call it, turning, because what happens is the soil is loose, you don't have cracks. So what you then exploit is the fact that ball almost holds a little bit longer because
More
it gets
grip.
rolled up. There's more grip, and then it starts to deviate. So at least that's the way I've understood the basics as somebody who's never actually
Yeah.
created a pitch.
No, that seems very intuitive, like a 2x2 of dry versus moist and hard versus soft. That makes sense. So let's layer on one more
Hmm.
element on top of it, which is the idea of nature. It's a very standard thing. It's a cloudy morning. It's
Yeah.
a bowler's day and a batsman's nightmare.
Mhm.
Why does that happen? At least they say it's a myth that clouds directly do not change or increase the amount of swing. It's what they indicate in the atmosphere, like the fact that there's more moisture in the atmosphere. That's what is driving more swing. So what happens there?
So the thing I actually understand the least is swing. Maybe I might differ back to you, but the only thing that I have heard is there's two ways the ball can move. One is it can move in the air because of overhead conditions or the way the bowler grips the ball or releases the ball. That's number one. And the second is the pitch, right? As I said, the amount of grass that's on the pitch, the amount of moisture that's on the pitch. And so the way the ball actually meets the surface. So we talk about bowlers who more hit the pitch hard versus bowlers who slide the ball more. Without getting too technical, bowlers who bowl with their arm closer to their ear deliver the ball more vertically. So that means they hit the pitch hard. Bowlers who had a little bit more, as they call it, round arm, so your arm is farther away from your ear, and you deliver the ball, means the ball slides a bit more, and that gives different types of movement. So that's at least conceptually how much I understand it. But do you have a take on this, the swing and how swing matters based on nature?
Yeah, I think the only other explanation around swing on a cloudy day that I have heard is that swing basically works is there is airflow around the ball there's turbulent flow on one side and there's a smoother flow on the other. and that's
Okay.
what creates swing, right?
Okay.
From that perspective, you need the surface of the ball to create that turbulence, right? But
Okay.
the air around should probably be stiller. It should be still air around because
Okay.
the way the rough ball moves through the air, that's what is creating the turbulence.
Right.
So on a cloudy day, because there is no heat convection or like there's no air coming or heating happening on the ground, that is leading to a still air and just a denser air in which the air is still and the rough side of the ball can create more turbulence than the smooth side of the ball.
Mm.
And that's why you have more optimal conditions for swing. But
Ah.
on a sunny day when there
Yeah.
is like a lot of heat coming from the ground itself, the wind near the pitch itself is pretty turbulent on its own. So
Mm.
that does not allow a much higher distinction between turbulent flow and smooth flow on two sides of the ball because it's
Mm.
turbulent all around, creating
Interesting.
less swing opportunities. That's kind of the other explanation I'd heard.
Yeah, and I think just taking it down to bowlers who we've seen in the past and bowlers who we're seeing nowadays, right? At least when you take fast bowlers who bowl quicker, like there was this whole generation of seamers who came from England, for example, who would bowl at 120, 130 kilometers an hour, but they would only rely on swing, right? You even had the likes of like a Mark Elam who would be unplayable, or Chris White who would be just unplayable because of just conditions, and people like even Ronnie Irani, like limited overs matches, right? And then you had the geniuses of Wasim Akram and Waqar Yunus who could like make that ball talk. It would be like they were letting out like a top from their hand. And it made no difference whether you could see how they were holding the ball, how they were releasing the ball. You were just hoping that the ball wasn't on target and you could let it go. And then I look at some of our bowlers today, and we talk about Indian cricket a lot, so I'm gonna stick to things I know better. But you think about someone like a Mohammad Siraj or a Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, right? So two very different examples. So Mohammad Siraj, very hard hit the deck bowler, right? Naturally bowls outswing, but he's developed an amazing in swinger now, right? I think he's done it basically the way you described it, judging the conditions and being able to know where to release the ball to be able to get the ball to cut back in. On the other end is Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, naturally more of a swing bowler, right? Doesn't depend on pace, but he's now both upped his pace and been able to impart like swing to the ball in taking advantage of the pitch. So it's a really fascinating thing that has grown. And from the era of almost accusing bowlers who are doing reverse swing of maybe tampering with the ball or doing something fishy with the ball, to now just taking it for granted that bowlers can just develop different ways of swinging the ball and make use of the pitch. I think there's been a fascinating evolution in terms of bowling skills as well.
Yep. If only Irfan Pathan played in these
Yes.
times and
Yeah.
not when he actually did.
Yeah.
But we could dream of a faster Irfan Pathan. So, and the last layer on
Yeah.
top of the pitches is we spoke about inherently what the pitch is.
Yes.
We spoke about how conditions are affecting it. The third comes in the roller, and you briefly
Mm,
mentioned it for a bit. And I guess the batsmen are given a choice before
mm,
the innings on whether they want a soft roller, they want a hard roller.
mm.
What does that do, and how does that influence the pitch?
Yeah. So again, very, very good point that you raised. The way it usually works, I'm taking a test match example. The fielding side decides what kind of roller they want at the end of the innings of the batting side. What that means is early on in the test match, the pitch is quote unquote holding together more because it's much earlier on. And towards the end, the pitch is breaking up a lot more. So a bowling team, because they want to come back to bat, they want to make sure the pitch is held together a lot more when they are coming out to bat. Or conversely, if they're going to bowl again, they want the pitch to stay. The longer it goes, they want them to stay, the looseness to stay so that the ball behaves unpredictably. So typically what you will see is after a bowling side is done bowling, is that they will ask for a hard roller, right? Because what they will want is the pitch to get bound together a lot more. And after you finish your innings, before you come out to bat, you ask for a heavy roller so that you can bind the pitch back together and you can negate at least some of the advantage initially until the pitch starts to disintegrate again. Whereas, say you have an advantage, you are about to enforce a follow on, and then you want the pitch to stay as it is, then you ask for a light roller so that the pitch stays
Got it.
disintegrated, and then you can come back and you can keep taking advantage of the conditions, especially in more spinning surfaces where you want pitch to be soft, you want the surface to break, you want the cracks to happen. Is I sort of understand it, but I'm willing to be corrected by someone who knows this.
Logically, absolutely makes sense. So, yeah, thanks. Yeah, what else do you want to talk about?
we first of all promised to keep this tight, right? Keep our episodes
Yeah.
tight. So in the spirit of that, I know we wanted to also do a regular trivia segment. So
Yep.
I know you had something ready. So do you want to do that?
Yeah, let's do it. So this time it's less of a trivia. It's more of etymology on cricket
Sure.
and how the terms come about. So I'm going to just throw some terms at you and want to understand how or why they came about. And this is all my reading of the internet. So if the internet is wrong, it probably is wrong. Don't kill the messenger.
Let's
Yeah.
do it.
Okay. So the first is the most traditional, not traditional, the fielding position called point.
Yeah.
How do you think it came about? Because most fielding positions are fairly intuitive, like long on or a mid off. Like on is leg and off is offside, and then mid is middle of the field, and then long is long of the field. Long leg makes sense. Fine leg kind of makes sense. Where did point come from?
Actually, like on that note, I'm not sure most of the cricketing fielding positions are that intuitive to understand, right? Because I've grown up watching it, but when I try and explain it to someone who doesn't understand cricket, they go, why is this called cover? What are they actually covering? Why is it called slip? Are they slipping? Like, no. So I'm thinking about point the same way. Like, is that, I don't know, is that the point from where you can see best, or is that like that's the only thing that I can think of when I think of point? It's like a viewing point or something. Is that right?
Yeah. Okay. So we'll do rapid fire. Okay.
Okay,
The
fine.
point is it's shortening of point of the bat. So for it to come to point, it has to come off the point of the bat because you're playing a square cut kind of a shot.
I
So
see.
like sort of the edge of the bat for it to actually reach point. That's kind of the
Interesting.
genesis of point.
Interesting. Okay.
All right. I know you mentioned it already, but where do you think slips came from?
Yeah, I'm sure I'm gonna get this wrong or be way off. I never understood what slip is. Like, are you slipping? Like, as in, are you slipping down? Or let me think.
Rapid fire.
I have to pass, man. I've always been confounded by slip. I genuinely don't know where it comes from.
It's basically the ball is slipping from the bat, and hence it's going to the slip. You do
Okay.
not intend to hit it there. It's slipping from the bat.
Understood. Okay, makes sense.
Okay. So and I'll give you a little bit of a lead on from to the next question is
Okay.
so these two were the first two sort of fielding positions to come in, which is the slipping of the bat is going to a slip.
Yeah.
It's going to cut from the point of the bat is going to point. So where do you think the third man concept came on?
So, okay, I always thought if there's a third man, there has to be a first man and a second man somewhere. So, I don't know, maybe the first man is the batsman and the second man is someone who's in the ring. So third man is someone who's the farthest one. So it's the third man. Is that right?
Come on, I gave you a hint. So the first man is you got the concept right. The first man is slip. Okay. The second man is point. And traditionally then they realized they needed to have someone behind as the third man. So that's where third man came on the offside.
Okay. Well, I'll give myself 2/3 of the points.
Yeah, I think I'll give you 2/3 of the point. That's fair. All right, last two. So this one is clearly, I think someone has just bluffed this on the internet, but I'll still give it to you. It seems funny. Where does cover come from? Because you clearly said that people don't know why it's called cover.
Yeah, I don't know either. Like, I'm like, what are you covering basically? So I guess if I'm cover, am I covering some other fielder, or am I covering something from the batsman? Those are the two things I can think of. And then there's also extra cover, which I think makes sense. The extra cover is just you're giving somebody extra cover, like, so there's another cover.
Yeah.
But I just think cover is just you're covering a certain shot from the batsman. Maybe that was the most popular shot in that era. So that's what I think it is. Is that right?
Okay, so it's actually the reverse, which is, and again, I am going by the internet here. It seems to be a bunch of bullshit, but it seems like cover drive was the rarest shot to be played because it's technically very difficult to play a cover drive. So because the ball never really traveled in that direction, they kept the covers of the pitch there.
Really?
It seems like that. So I'm not sure how true it is. So because the covers of the pitch were kept there, they just called it cover.
Interesting.
And yeah.
Because I always used to wonder, why is it called a cover drive? Is it because it's played towards cover, or is the fielding position cover because a cover drive is played towards there and you try and protect that area? But now it makes sense. If you actually keep the covers of the pitch, then the position should be called cover, and then the shot played towards that side should be called a cover drive. So,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, if someone is is making up this article on the internet, then kudos,
Yeah.
and you've helped us spend 5 minutes on it. Otherwise, I think this was very, very entertaining, and I have definitely failed this quiz, but I
Yeah,
still
and
learned
I'll
a lot.
throw a last one for you.
Yes, go for it.
Where does Yorker come from?
Yorker. So does it have anything to do with like Yorkshire by any chance? Like, because like I just think there's something to do with York or the place York, and York is like a county in England. So maybe the first person to bowl the delivery was a Yorkshireman or somebody from York, and so it's called
I'll give
Yorker.
this one to you. Yeah, it is basically there was, again, this is folklore, so it could be completely wrong, but apparently there was a cricketer named Tom Emmett
Okay.
who was a highly successful bowler from Yorkshire, and he was very skilled at bowling balls that landed at the popping crease. And when people had to go play in Yorkshire, they were told that, are you prepared to play the balls bowled by the York guy? And then it became, are you prepared to play the Yorkers?
Ah,
Uh,
okay.
so that's kind of the etymology of Yorkers.
Interesting. That was definitely a guess in the dark, but I think it makes sense. This and very, very, very fascinating. Cool. We're almost at the half-hour mark. So before we wrap up, should we do a couple of other quick rapid fires?
Let's do it.
All right. Favorite Pakistani cricket player, past or present?
Favorite Pakistani cricket player has to be Waqar Yunus.
Karin, cool.
Yeah.
Mine's Imran Khan.
You've
Mine's Imran Khan.
Yeah, I've never seen Imran Khan play live as much. So
yeah.
I've probably started watching cricket when Waqar and Wasim were at their peaks. So
yeah.
probably that's why.
Okay, cool. Second is favorite India-Pakistan game played in a neutral venue. And Centurion is not allowed because everybody says Centurion.
In a neutral venue. Oh man, come on. You had to give me Mohali at least.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Wait, you can't take away Centurion and Mohali from the options. I'll just go. I don't know where the Sohail Abbas and Venkatesh Prasad.
That was Bangalore. That was Bangalore. Fine.
Oh man,
we'll give you that. It was still a global tournament, I guess. It wasn't technically a bilateral series. My favorite one is actually a very obscure one. Something that it happened in Australia, where there was a tri-series between India, Pakistan, and Australia. It was last ball, 1 run to win of 1 ball, and I still remember Venkatesh Prasad came in. The non-striker was, I think, Waqar Yunus. He almost tried to mankad him because he thought Waqar Yunus was leaving the non-striker's crease. And Waqar just stared at him because he wasn't. And so Venkatesh Prasad goes back to bowl. India have 9 fielders in the circle. Saqlain Mushtaq misses the ball, but Waqar is dashed down, and Saqlain runs to the other end. And obviously India fumble and the run out doesn't happen. Pakistan win, and Saqlain just keeps running all the way to the pavilion, bat raised. So it was a great moment, right? I'm sure all the Pakistanis were very
oh
happy.
man, you chose a moment or a match where India lost. Oh.
I'm wearing the India jersey. So I'm compensating the juju. All right, one or two questions back to you on rapid fire.
Oh, okay. Favorite cricket shot to play and to watch?
Favorite cricket shot to play for me is the flick of the legs, because I love the feeling when the ball gets timed really well. And I think it's one of those you can play to different lengths. If it's Yorker length, you can go on the back foot. If it's a good length, you can play it off the front foot. So I actually like flicking the ball off the legs. Favorite shot to watch, I think, is the back foot punch. We talked about the Sachin shot, but I just think like to be able to generate that kind of power off the back foot and to be able to time and place it is my favorite. What about you?
For me to play, I am a product of agricultural cricket in gully cricket in India. So for me, it is the ugly hoik over deep mid wicket. That that will always remain my favorite shot to play. We literally had this fielding position growing up. It was called Khopcha, which was deep mid wicket because it wasn't very deep mid wicket. And Khopcha is a very Bombay slang for this dingy dark corner. Which is what it was, but it was the most productive area. So we used to always say, go field in the Khopcha.
Yeah, most of the time you stationed a fielder there because there would be like a gutter or something behind, and you want to make sure the ball doesn't disappear into the dark Khopcha of the gutter. So you keep a fielder there so that you don't lose the ball. But yeah, I can imagine you playing the ugly hoik, as you called it, over deep mid wicket. And favorite one to watch?
Favorite one to watch? It's changed recently because of T20 cricket. For me, watching an aerial cover drive for six. Somehow KL Rahul and Kohli have this in their short book where they just have this lofted cover drive that often sails for six. It is just a delight to watch.
Yeah, I mean Surya Kumar Yadav is doing it, nowadays with
Yep.
that almost that pelican look of with at arch back and
Yep.
stuff. So yeah. No, that is a delightful shot. It's a delightful shot. Cool. Well, we're out of time. We will see each other on the next one.
Yes, this was fun. Thanks, Jayant.
Thanks, Arpit. Talk to you later.
Bye.